Welcome to International Finance. I am Andy Kim, your Dr. Finance, and we're talking about balance of payment this time, a second video. Now, last time I gave you some orientation about this chapter 3 of Un and Resnick and Chulun. This balance of payment is the statistical record of a country's international transactions over a certain period of time, okay, in a double entry bookkeeping manner. I told you about this why we have to study, balance of payment, and in this one will be, an important, very important subject if you are preparing for the exam for your job in Korea, Kaksim Bank, Korean Export and Import Bank, and Bank of Korea, and this kind of places, right? And it has a lot of, linkage from the macroeconomics, what you learned already. So it's gonna be a kind of a refresher in your mind, right? I hope it works that way. But the common terminology or familiar terminology is like this. Balance of payment is called 국제수지 in Korean pronunciation. I don't know how to, pronounce it in Chinese. 구어지, 수지, I don't know. And then current account balance is something called 경상수지. 징상수지, I don't know. Is that right? I don't know. Trade balance is 무역수지. I really don't know how to pronounce in Chinese. And then financial accounts, that's 금융계정, 찐룽, 찌증, or I don't know. And then capital account balance is 자본수지, right? 자본수지,资本수지. And then foreign currency reserve is something called 외환보유고. And then surplus and deficit is something called 흑자 and 적자, 허이즈 and 지즈. I don't know. GDP, export and import flows versus stock concept, all these kind of things. Goes back to your economics or in your macroeconomics 101 or basic macroeconomics. Now, the flow concept, I have to say it right now. This is more like income statement of your country, I would say. Okay? Flow concept, I would say. This is not really a profit or not, because country is not a profit-taking organization. But what I'm trying to say is that balance of payment is more like a flow concept instead of snapshot, right? So just like income statement, right? Balance sheet is more like for company, right? For a company, balance sheet is more like a snapshot at one time point, how you're doing, and then you do your business. That's video, right? Over a period of time, and then at the end of the time, you take another snapshot. That's balance sheet, and then this video, okay, over that period, that's income statement or cash flow statement, right? Flowing in, flowing out. What's the net that you got? That's flow concept. Balance of payment is exactly like that. Okay? So you should remember this. I did it like this so that you have to remember. And then when you say a country's balance of payment are referring to the transactions of its citizens and government. Yeah. So accounting basics, debit versus credit, all these kind of things will show up over here. 차변, 대변 in Korean terminology, right? Okay. So, any transactions that result in a receipt from foreigners will be recorded as a credit. Okay? If you remember, I was trying to pull out those pen, but it's where is that? Anyway, so I can now pull out this one. Yeah. This is double entry bookkeeping. You remember, if it is balance sheet is what? Here on the left hand side is debit and credit, right? Right hand side is credit. So I want to stick to this T account kind of stuff. Debit on your left hand side, credit on your right hand side. But here is a kind of let me first go through the basics. If it is a balance sheet, what happens over here? Balance sheet, debit, credit, asset, liabilities, and equities. right? You have balance sheet identity over there. If it is income statement, what did you do? Okay, what did you do? Well, over here, income statement, 자산, 부채, 자본, 비용, 수익. So it's like a cost, what you spent, and then revenues, what you come in, what you gain, right? I should. What comes in is in your right hand side, the credit side, and what goes out is debit side. Okay, what goes out is on your left hand side, right? Remember that basic, right? 자산, 부채, 자본, 비용, 수익 in Korean terminology. So I'm going to stick to that rule. Okay. In contrast, in the textbook, okay, it's kind of confusing because the textbook authors write the credit item on the left hand side and the debit items on the right hand side with a minus sign, so that you may feel like, what? A bit uneasy, right? But that, I'm not trying to blame the textbook author. This is a wonderful textbook, the best textbook, I told you. The other textbooks, if you see it, they don't even distinguish debit and credit, and they just go on one line. Terrible, even more terrible. So there is no way out, I would say, right? But I'll try to make it in my own way so that you will be more coherent in accounting basics rule. Okay, debit versus credit, left hand side versus right hand. Oh yeah. In your picture, right? So it's flip side, mirror image. So I have to take it. Debit versus credit, left hand side, right hand side. I'll try to make it more consistent for you. Okay, in our discussion. Yes, that's one point of confusion in discussion of balance of payment, but that's not all. I mean, the balance of payment, we could roughly understand what that is going about, right? You can, it's all about import and export, and then what's the surplus or deficit, right? Who doesn't know about it? As you incur more deficit, your currency will depreciate. You want to keep your economy healthy, so that you want to export more. You want to compete over there, and then for that purpose, you want to manage currency, so that you want to manage enough of currency reserves, foreign currency reserves. That's something understandable, but what confuses the readers or the students, right, for balance of payment, is that the IMF, right, it's not about the textbook itself, but about the IMF's rule, and then all countries' different rules of representing this balance of payment. Of course, there is one standard way that the IMF imposes, and then they renews this policy about how to represent your balance of payment, right? Every 5 years, every 5 years, they show it, and then the countries, many different countries, follow their rules. Ooh, how to show this current account, and how to show this capital account and financial account, and like that, right? They have to follow IMF's policy, but the detail of it, right, may differ. Okay, may differ. So that the Korean Bank of Korea's material about balance of payment, right, does not seem 100% congruent to IMF or the textbook representation. The thing is, my students, many of them are, studying for this, Bank of Korea based the regulations, so that I want to have some kind of a consistency over there, or coherency somehow, so that we don't want to jeopardize too much. And then other part of potential confusion is that the classification or the naming of the items change over time. okay, naming of the items or the relative importance depending on it, naming of the items, okay, change over time. For example, the balance of financial account, right? In the version 8 of the textbook, it did not have it. But in version 9 of the textbook, it has it. Why? Because the IMF regulation changed about balance of payment representation. So we have to be following the IMF's the suggestions. So that's why. So don't get confused too much, right? There's a lot of room for confusion, but that's something, we have to digest, right? Why is that? I had a hard time figuring out what the heck is going on. You're not the only one. If you feel like you're screwed, okay, don't worry. Let's get through together in that sense. Okay, balance of payment accounting. Any transactions that result in a receipt from foreigners will be recorded as credit. Yeah, I told you. With a positive sign in the U.S. balance of payment. Foreign sales of U.S. goods. I mean, the U.S. This is U.S. textbook. So U.S. means domestic. Okay, domestic. Foreign sales of domestic goods and services, goodwill, financial claims, and real assets, right? Credit side. In your screen has to be over here, right? Right, to the right hand side. Any transaction that gives rise to a payment to foreigners will be recorded as a debit. Okay, debit with a negative sign. This is going out of your pocket, the country's pocket. So left hand side in your screen, yeah, left hand side. Okay, for example, domestic purchases of foreign goods and services, goodwill, financial claims, and real assets. Okay, now here's an example. Suppose that Maplewood Bicycle in Maplewood, Missouri, USA imports $100,000 worth of bicycle frames from Queen Bicycles in Derby, England. British one, yes. There will exist a $100,000 credit recorded by Queen that offsets $100,000 debit at Maplewood's bank account. Double entry bookkeeping. They have to cancel each other out somehow. They have to, a matching principle, I would say, instead of saying cancel each other out. Matching principle. Yes. This will lead to a rise in the supply of dollars and the demand for British pounds, right? Demand increases, the price of pound go up. That's appreciating, I would say. Now, I know the way I pronounced it, kind of funny, right? I said appreciating. I'm following Professor Ross Levine in UC Berkeley. He used to be my teacher in my MBA days. In world economy, he's such a great scholar. UC Berkeley, Ross Levine, right? Levine. I want you to go ahead and Google search his webpage in Berkeley Finance, right? He was teaching, he was a star professor in Minnesota. And then whenever he was pronouncing appreciation and depreciation, the correct pronunciation is like appreciate and depreciate. But in world economy class, he was always saying appreciating and depreciating. Why is that the case? Because it's so confusing. Because it's so confusing about the FX rate going up or down. But appreciating, right, is clear in that sense, even though it is a wrong pronunciation. Appreciating, US dollar appreciating, depreciating, right? So I'm going to try to do that in my class as well. So let's see. Balance of payment, how does that look like? Well, here is Bank of Korea's arrangement, okay? Bank of Korea's arrangement, which largely follows, right, IMF's regulation, and is coherent to a larger extent with the US and the rest of the countries that they do, right? But here there are some details that are a little bit differently represented over in this. But let's take that big picture over here. First item is current account. and it's called 경상수지 in Korean terminology. 경상수지. That's a current account and capital account and financial account and statistical discrepancy. 4 different items you can think about it. Okay? And current account is 경상수지. It's about trade. Capital account is 자본수지. And then financial account is 금융계정. Okay, 금융계정. It's really about the FDI or a direct investment or portfolio investment, all those things. Well, it sounds like it should belong to capital account, but it belongs to financial account. Okay? Isn't it capital investment? Nah, this one is more like transfer, kind of, infrequent transfer of, of kind of wealth. And then we're going to talk about that in detail. But the usual thing that we talk about in portfolio investment, like your stock investment in your Tesla, right? That's equity securities investment. That's financial account. Any of you invested in GameStop from Korea? That's equity securities. Good luck, right? And then derivatives and debt securities, all portfolio investment, that falls into financial account. Okay? In version 8 of this textbook, I told you, okay, they did not have this one, but they only have this one. And this incorporated all these things, right? So that's one difference of version 9. Get this book, all right? Or at least copy chapter 3 from somebody else, right? Your friends or something. Anyway, and then other investments and official reserve account, right? This is increase or decrease of your foreign reserve, right? I told you this is a video, right? One to the other video instead of snapshot, okay? So statistical discrepancy is the last item that you have to think about. Current account, goods, services, primary income, and secondary income, 상품 수지, 서비스 수지, 본원 수지, 이전 수지, 소득 수지. We're going to go through that part a little later, okay? So wait for the third part of my lecture. I'm already done for the 20 minutes. So thanks for watching and see you.